Hello, students. Today we are talking about the paper which is written by criticism, which is written by Northrop Frye, and then the topic is myth, fiction, and displacement. So I have written some small notes which I think would clear what is actually the difference between the myth, fiction, and displacement. So just make it better why the myth, fiction, and displacement have close interrelation, like it is explained by Northrop Frye. So it can't make you, but in it can't make you satisfied. But please check it from this note that I have mentioned here. That the myth flourishes around the society as a certain type of story. It is a story in which some of the chief characters are God and others being larger in power than humanity. It is influences society to believe it, although actually it is like a folk tale. That is such an abstract story pattern, even if it does not need the plausible or logical story in motivation. But the society still believe it as a story really happened or having some exceptional significance in explaining certain features of life such as rituals, although it is such an odd tendency emerging around society and merely it is able to build up bigger structure. So the myth is the part of the world of art form as a verbal art time to time. Society creates it relying on their belief that probably comes from their experiences from the natural space. Then it emerges the perspective in human beings that grows the system of tales, such as they called it mythology. Every developed mythology tends to complete itself to outline an entire universe. Like myth जो होती है वो सोसाइटी में जैसे हमारे नानी नानी नाना दादी दादी जो हम लोग को स्टोरी सुनाते हैं भगवान की या कुछ ऐसी चीजों की परियों की कहानियां सुनाते हैं जिसका इन्फ्लुएंस जो होता है वो सोसाइटी पे होता है उसको हम लोग मिथ कहते हैं मीन्स उसमें जो है सोसाइटी बढ़ती है फिर उसको एक स्ट्रॉन्गर चीज़ों की तरह एब्जॉर्ब कर लेती है तो ये एक वर्बल आर्ट है मीन्स वर्बली ये बताई जाती है लोगों को और लोग इस पे बिलीव स्टार्ट करते हैं कि हाँ ऐसा है और उनकी जो नेचुरल सराउंडिंग्स है उनको लेके ही मिथ क्रिएट्स होती है तो जो पर्सपेक्टिव होता है लोगों का ह्यूमन बीइंग का जो धीमे धीमे बढ़ता है कि मतलब ये पहले होता था इस तरह से तो वो माइथोलॉजी में इंक्लूडेड हो जाता है तो वो जो माइथोलॉजी होती है वो उस तरह से वहाँ पे एक सीन क्रिएट कर लेती है मीन्स एक लोगों के अंदर अजम्पशंस क्रिएट कर लेती है कि नहीं ऐसा हुआ था तो दैट इज कॉल्ड मिथ. So, to understand the myth, it properly knows the principles influencing to form the myth in assimilating to nature, to human form, that is analogy and identity. Analogy means that there is a relation bounding between human life and natural phenomena. Identity conceives of a like sun god, a tree god. These will be inherent to the perception of society. Then perhaps a myth may told and retold. It may be modified or elaborated accordingly, or different patterns may be discovered in it, like its life is always the poetic life of a story, always in a poetic form. So, like in many cases, the myth becomes the main outline, then occupied by literature, including fiction as well. Myth includes fiction. So, the literature is more flexible to tell the story of a universe implicitly or completely perhaps consisting of a myth. Also, similarly, the principle of myth, analogy, and identity becomes the structural principle of literature. Thus, between the myth and literature can form a certain relation intending to study the genre and the convention of literature. So, on the other hand, the literature seemed to have a purpose letting the myth still alive and making it credible, plausible, or logical. So, this technique can be called as displacement time to time, and there is a continuity established in a unity between the myth and the literature. Myth is accompanied by fiction. आप ध्यान दीजिए means myth में fiction होगा and it brings a flexibility to the story. इसी चीज को डिस्प्लेसमेंट कहा गया है, जब इसमें हम लोग उसको एक क्रेडिबल या प्लॉजिबल या लॉजिकल बनाते हैं बाय डिफरेंट जॉनरा और उसके अंदर fiction ऐड कर देते हैं, that is displacement. So there is a continuity established in unity between the myth and literature, which is called as fiction. So this is very simple language I have explained you. So in the conclusion, the literary criticism is taken to understand the structure, system forming the literature or myth. It shows that the literary shapes comes only from literary tradition and so ultimately from myth, although the literature is created in unified imaginative system. So one of the main uses of myth criticism is to enable to understand the corresponding place that a work of literature has in the context of literature as a whole, right? So finally, the literature is a reconstructed mythology with its structural principles that is derived from the myth. So this is the important conclusion. आप इसको बार बार फिर से देखिएगा, ये जो लास्ट में मैंने मेंशन किया है, that literature is reconstructed mythology with its structural principles derived from the myth. So ये मेरा थोड़ा छोटा सा presentation था, myth, fiction and displacement by Northrop Frye. I hope you like my presentation, and if you like this, so please subscribe to my channel for further videos. Thank you.